Welcome back to the Sports Booth YouTube channel. Today, a special video. What we're doing is we're going through every single Rugby World Cup game and ranking it based on how the game was and performed, I guess, on a scale of 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, and finally 1-star. So 5 stars, obviously the best game or best few games. 4-star, then we go 3 all the way down to the duds in the 1-star. Now, obviously, All Blacks fans, so opinion bias will fall out there. I'll try and be as neutral as possible, but as we all know, bias comes into action when you're talking about your favourite sports team. What we've got it set up here is every single game from the first game, New Zealand versus France, all the way through to the final. We're going to rank each game, maybe have a little bit of chat on some of the specifics and why I've put them there. But for now, let's get straight into it. Game 1, New Zealand versus France. Now, pre-tournament, this was obviously very hyped up. The last time these two teams had played, France had beaten New Zealand. France coming up in world rankings above them, home World Cup, big first game. I think it actually delivered on a lot of what needed to happen. As bad as it felt to lose to France in that pool game, lose our first ever pool game, it set the Rugby World Cup tournament on its way. It definitely wasn't the best game, but I think it was a 4-star game when you're looking at the Rugby World Cup in a greater picture. On to the second game, Italy versus Namibia. Italy came out of the block strong here, 52-8 win. Nothing really special about the game. I don't want to say it was a dud. I think it was well contested, but I'm only going to give it 2 stars. It wasn't a game I'd go back and rewatch for maybe Italian fans, maybe because of it was by far their best performance at the Rugby World Cup. But everyone else, we're going to leave it as a 2-star. Next up, Ireland and Romania, and this is, when you look at the games like this, it's hard to rate because on one hand you had Ireland who went over and beyond, I think, in this game especially. I remember watching this game live and just going their attack looked so smooth. They were deadly with ball in hand. Romania, scored a try and definitely created some chances, but just weren't on the same level. For that fact, I actually got it as a 3-star. I think it was, if you look back and you watch this game, just seeing Ireland's attack in motion was extraordinary. So I think it's a 3-star. Australia versus Georgia, not a very memorable game for both teams. A lot of handling errors, penalties. One of the few times I think Australia didn't lose the penalty count in the Rugby World Cup game. This game best remembered for Ben Donaldson carving up the Georgians. I've actually gone with a 2-star. I put it in the same as Italy and Namibia. Nothing special, but I wouldn't go back and rewatch it, but it'll do. England versus Argentina. Now, this one's really hard. In my head, the game, when you actually think about these two in this game, it's a 1-star. The red card to Tom Curry, the game itself was miserable. Shining light George Ford putting on a performance. But I think when you actually look at the game of rugby, it's a 1-star for me. And it's probably the most controversial 1-star because I go, would I rather go back and watch a George Ford masterclass and Namibia versus Italy? And this is where I'm saying I'd probably rather go back and watch Namibia versus Italy. So just purely based on that game, it was just such a yuck game. Japan versus Chile, next game up. Now, this, I actually thoroughly enjoyed this. Chile came out, showed that they were here, announced themselves at this tournament. Really strong play, hard tackling, good game. I sit it there and I go, it's definitely not one game that's going to stand out, but I just think what Chile did in this tournament and how they competed, I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. So I've gone with a 3-star. South Africa versus Scotland, probably one of the least memorable games for South Africa in this Rugby World Cup. When you look back in all the rest of their games and as we come up to them, you'll see they were actually quite a dominant, team on performance-wise with, they won the Rugby World Cup, but the actual performances were good to watch. This game, not so entertaining, but they got the job done. I've actually given it a 2-star. I was disappointed in Scotland's performance. I don't think many South Africans will look back and go, that's a game we want to rewatch. Wales versus Fiji. I'm actually going to put this in the 4 stars, very close to a 5-star. I think second best pool game. It was better performance than the New Zealand versus France game. Everyone's going to say, the reffing didn't take away from the spectacle of the game, may have changed the result a little bit, but still a fantastic game in my eyes. France versus Uruguay. Now this one is also going to fall into the 4 stars because of the result, 27-12, but the fight that Uruguay put on, the performance that France kind of didn't back up the All Blacks with after naming a second string team. It wasn't as good as the first game of the Rugby World Cup, but for a minnow to push a team, or a Tier 2 nation, I should say, to push a Tier 1 nation that well, really good game. New Zealand versus Namibia. It's very similar to the Namibia-Italy game. New Zealand did the job. Some really nice tries. Nothing special. I've gone 2-star. Would not go back and rewatch it. Samoa versus Chile. Chile again came up, backed up their first round performance by pushing hard against Samoa, 43-10. It wasn't as good as the game against Japan, and for that reason it goes into the 2-star category, but it does fall above that. I'd actually put South Africa there, even though that wasn't a good game, I'd probably go like that. Wales versus Portugal, 28-8 to Wales. It was a fascinating affair, again, where you have a minnow competing really hard, a Tier 2 nation against a Tier 1 nation, and for Portugal to do it the way that they did. At the time, it was really impressive. Obviously, after their results down the line, you can say you were just about a little bit disappointed that Portugal didn't push harder. But with that, I gave them a 3-star. A good enough game. It wasn't one of those great rugby games. It was one of the lower 3-stars, but a good performance all around. Ireland versus Tonga, another one of Ireland where they just showed how impressive they were on attack with the ball in hand. Tonga's first game, didn't get out of the starting blocks. I've got it as a low 3-star, and I actually put it just above the Wales-Portugal performance. South Africa versus Romania, another one not that memorable against Romania. I think this was the game, and may be corrected in the comment section, that South Africa played 4 halfbacks. And if that's what's memorable about this game, then it tells you everything you need to know. It's definitely not a 1-star. South Africa still showed out, but it is, I'm going to put it there in the 2 stars. Nothing special about that Rugby World Cup game. Australia versus Fiji. This is a 4-star. A Fiji win. I know probably rugby terms, it's not a 4-star. The game wasn't great, but the win against Fiji, Australia in strife, the competition, the actual game itself was good enough to probably be a high-end 3-star, and then the result, I think, takes it to 4 stars. England versus Japan, another one where not that impressed, but impressed enough. I couldn't put it in a 3-star. I didn't think the game was as good as it could be, but I gave it a high-end 2-star. 34-12, England come away with a win there. Italy versus Uruguay, 38-17. An impressive performance with both teams, but again, nothing that jumped out at me where I was like, you know what, this is a game I would rewatch. It's better than Italy versus Namibia, and I would say some of those other games. I just put it above the England-Japan game to go 2 stars. So it was a good game, but again, anything 3 stars and above, I wouldn't mind if you sat down there and the 3 stars and the game was on, I'd rewatch it. 4 stars, I'd probably go back to get a bit more information. 5 stars, I'm more than happy to watch again. 2 stars, I'm not watching again. France versus Namibia, 96-0. This was an impressive game, and the biggest story from this game was obviously Dupont's injury. I think if I was to rank this, I think it goes above the Italy Uruguay game just purely because of the result. I don't think everyone was expecting it to be that big after France's second game against Uruguay, and Namibia only 70 points against the All Blacks. So I've got it as a low-end 3-star. I'd still rather watch the Wales-Portugal game as a more of a contest, but I think that game was good. Argentina-Samoa. This is a tough one because the game was pretty average. Argentina didn't play a lot of good footy until, I guess, later on in the tournament, to be fair. And I don't think Samoa played all that well in this game either, but the result has me going like, it was a close enough game to make it interesting, very interesting, and it kind of had you on the edge of your seat enough that I gave it a 3-star. I'm not happy about it. It's in the end the 3 stars, but I gave it a 3-star. Georgia versus Portugal, draw. Anytime you get a draw, especially even against 2 tier teams nations, this was Portugal again showing up that they were a really, really good team in this competition. It's a 3-star. It goes above their loss to Wales. Actually, it goes above Tonga and Ireland as well, just to have you on the edge of your seat. I don't think it was as good a game as Japan-Chile, even though that result was quite different. But yeah, that was, to me, that was the performance in that one. England versus Chile. This will be remembered for Henry's 5 tries. A good game, a really good game. This was one where I was like, England have a chance here. They showed out to beat Chile 71-0. It's a 3-star, and I think because of the 5 tries, I'm actually going to give it here. Yeah, I am. I think the 5 tries gets it up there, and the performance of England, because of how defensively strong Chile had been before that. Blowouts are hard to judge, as we've said, but yeah, that's how I went there. South Africa versus Ireland. The best game in the pool stages, in my opinion, and it is the first 5-star. Yes, 13-8, you'd think, oh, that's a low-scoring game. Maybe not the best for a new viewer of rugby to watch, but for me, someone who's watched a lot of rugby, just the intensity level, the game itself, just incredible. South Africa unlucky, I think, in that game, but Ireland showing that they've got the credentials to go on and win a World Cup. Obviously didn't do it, but they had the credentials there. Scotland versus Tonga, another one where I think Tonga failed to fire a shot and left me more disappointed than anything this game. Scotland needed to win it. I go high 2-star, but I don't put it over England or Japan's game. Wales versus Australia, probably everyone else bar any Australians going to think this, but I think this Welsh performance was just summed out how good they were in this tournament, and how deserving they were, and the bounce back was there. The absolute crumble that was Australia kind of came out in this game. There was devastation, obviously. They had lost out of the Rugby World Cup, pretty much. So, yeah, I actually think just for the performance, it's a top 3-star for me. I would put this over, and I'm actually going to put it 4-star, I've decided. 4-star, I think, low-end 4-star, just for the ruthlessness of Wales in the game. Maybe not such a great game, but definitely one that I could go back and rewatch that, to the detriment of my co-host Husey. Uruguay versus Namibia, another very, very good game. Namibia in with a shot there, red cards, just a great back and forth battle. It was definitely a high-end 3-star, and it is actually the top 3-star performance. If that came on the TV again, I wouldn't mind watching those two-tier nations go at it. Two teams fighting for the one chance of a win at this Rugby World Cup. Japan versus Samoa, both teams needed to win this to have any chance to really progress, so it was a really good fight. It had me again. It's one of those ones on the edge of the seat. I remember watching it and just being like, either team could take this game. I go high in 3-star, doesn't quite hit 4 stars, but it does take the top spot in the 3 stars. New Zealand versus Italy. Now this is an interesting one. Obviously here comes the New Zealand bias, but we went into this game as a New Zealand team where if we lost, we're out of the Rugby World Cup. Italy hadn't yet shown much, but they hadn't shown that they weren't in with a shout. It's a 4-star game for the ruthlessness to put a 2 Tier 1 nation and put 96 points on them. It is as good as Wales beating them. It's not as good as that first game, and I wouldn't go as good as I would go there. So about 3 in the 4-star. I just think the ruthlessness of New Zealand there to show as well. Argentina finally decided to show up and play some footy against a Southern American competition rival, Chile. They dominated them 59-5. It was a good game, but nothing special. Wouldn't go back and rewatch it, but I would rewatch it over the All Blacks versus Namibia. Fiji versus Georgia was a fantastic game. Line breaks, just that you could tell that the players were starting to tire in both teams here. 17-12, yes, there were a lot of handling errors, and yes, and that. So it probably wasn't the prettiest game of rugby, but in my perspective, this was definitely above a 2-star. I'm pushing it could be a 4-star. I just think the handling error and the level of play probably drop it down a little. So we are going to go 3-star, and we're going to go below. Yes, there. 3rd place. Scotland versus Romania. Nothing special again. 84-0. By this time, Romania had been spanked by everyone. Scotland needed this more than they needed it. It's a 2-star, and it's not even a very good 2-star. It was better than... It's ended up in the 1. It's ended up in the 1 again. It was better than the South African Romania one. It wasn't better than that. Yep, that's where it goes. Okay, moving on. Portugal. Australia needed to win, but again, this was a messy game. Portugal fought hard. It's a 2-star. It's just not even that pretty. I would rather watch Australia, Georgia over that, and only just. Yeah. That's where that one goes. South Africa, Tonga, another one where you go. South Africa turned up, did the job. Tonga just didn't really manage to fire a shot here. It's right there with the Scotland game. I'm going to go over the Scotland game because I think there were better rugby in this game than the Scotland-Tonga game. But again, 2-star wasn't that impressive. New Zealand, Uruguay, tough one here. I think there was some really good moments in this game, but again, it's a blowout. As a New Zealander, I'd watch this back, but to put it somewhere here, I'd watch it over the Namibia game, and I wouldn't watch it over that. So that's where that falls. 2-star again for another blowout. France versus Italy. This sealed France's place at the top of the pool, and they dominated. It's a 3-star. It's not an impressive 3-star. I think I put it above Namibia win, though, even though it was 96-0. Again, France and Italy, that's expected closer, so that's why I think France get up there. Wales and Georgia, I'm going to be honest, I think this is one of the few games I haven't seen enough on, and I can't even remember this game. Actually, no, I lie. I do remember this game. It was close at the half, and Wales pulled away at the end, but Georgia made it difficult. It was actually quite a good game of rugby. I'm going to give them that. I would rather watch it over the Tonga games. I would go, 2-star. Wasn't, maybe would it jump those two? I'd put it over that one. I probably wouldn't put it over that one. It wasn't special, but it definitely wasn't a bad game where I'm going low end to 1 stars, obviously. Samoa, England, one of the best games in the pools, and people were going to say it's robbed, but I'm going to actually go 5 stars. There was so much different rugby in this game and different styles. You had so many crucial moments, and people will say that's probably a bit of a high ranking for a game like that, but I think the way Samoa pushed England all the way, deserved the result, didn't get it. Sometimes it happens in rugby, but the way that England stayed resilient and got the win in the end, I was pretty impressed with as well. Ireland, Scotland, this is a high-end 4-star. Just the performance by Ireland, especially in the first half, just stunned me, had me on the back seat. I'd put it over France and Uruguay, and I'd put it over, no, I wouldn't put it over New Zealand, Italy, but I just thought that those first half especially, their attack was just incredible. Watching them tear Scotland apart was fantastic. We then go into what they called the 5th quarterfinal, because both Japan and Argentina at the spot had a chance to make the quarterfinals. Whoever won got in. Fantastic game of rugby. 39-27, a seesaw battle. It is a 4-star. I would put it over that game I just talked about, Scotland-Ireland. I wouldn't put it over the New Zealand-Italy game or the New Zealand-France game to kick us off, or the Wales-Fiji game. But it was a fantastic game. It deserves 4 stars. Tonga and Romania got to play out for who was going to win a game in that one. And you can go low 2 stars, I think. Yeah, there. That's unfortunate for Romania, but that's just how their tournament went, and this is lucky to be so high. It was more purely because when I watched that game, I was so fascinated by Irish tech that they ended up there, but you could easily move them lower. Now, this is a hard one because the game wasn't that great, but you create history like that, that's a 4-star. I would watch it over that. 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 Yeah, I think that's where it'll go. I would watch it over that. No, actually, I would watch it over that. I'm going to go, mid-range 4-star. Portugal's win to beat Fiji. You had so many storylines as well with Portugal beat Fiji by 7, then Fiji were out. Fiji managed to stay in and get to the quarters. But yeah, it was one heck of a game. Buddy, so now we're on to the quarterfinals and, the finals, as I should say. Wales versus Argentina was actually a fantastic game. 2 teams that hadn't really 100% hit their strides, but had played well enough. I think it's a 4-star. I think it's a low 4-star. I'd rather see those other games. They're correct. I would do that. It goes above Japan versus Samoa, but it's not as good as Wales smashing Australia in the pool stages and knocking them out of the Rugby World Cup. New Zealand versus Ireland, we have our second 5-star. I think it was better than the Ireland-South Africa game, but yeah, that at the moment is the leading game of the Rugby World Cup. And everyone said at the time, best game in the Rugby World Cup. Another good game, to be fair, was England versus Fiji. Fiji obviously had just lost to Portugal. You didn't know what was going to happen. England, just hold on. It's a 4-star. It was better than the first quarter. It was better than that. I'm going to go... No, I'm not going to go above you. Okay. That's where it goes, right in the middle of a 4-star. It was a really good game, definitely deserving of a quarterfinal nature. And yeah, that's where I'd put it. France versus South Africa quarterfinal, by far the best game at the Rugby World Cup. Overtaking what I thought was... I didn't think I was going to see a better game than New Zealand versus Ireland. But alas, I was wrong. France and South Africa turned on the performance of the year. Argentina versus New Zealand, the first semi-final. Massive disappointment when you look at it as an Argentina. I'm only putting it in a 3-star. Even as good as New Zealand was in that game, when you go with 5 minutes left, Scott Barrett don't even come back on after the yellow card. Shows the quality of that game. As good as New Zealand were, Argentina were poor. I don't think it jumps into... It goes above Samoa versus Japan, but it does not go in line with the quarterfinal of Wales versus Argentina, where we saw a proper fight. On the other hand, South Africa versus England, it was a very different game. People were going to judge me for this, and people were going to judge me really harshly, and I understand it. I get it. But I was on the edge of my seat for that whole game. As much of it was as a kicking duel, and it was so tactically fascinating in my mind. It's a low-end 5-star. It doesn't quite live up to what there is in those other games, but I think I would rather... I think I'd just rather watch... I would rather watch that semi-final again than Fiji versus Wales in that first game of their play. We had the third and fourth game, which was a second matchup of our only 1-star at the moment. But this game was a lot better. It wasn't fascinating enough to go anywhere higher than a low-end 4-star. I would rather watch the quarterfinal. Again, a third... Actually, towards the end there, I was pretty impressed. No, I'm leaving it there. And then the final, it was a 5-star final. It wasn't as good as that Ireland pool game, just maybe. It could jump there. I'm going to leave it as the fourth best game of the tournament. But this is what I mean when I talked about South Africa in that game against Tonga and Romania. And Scotland, they have 3 2-stars, but the rest of their games, 5 stars. They were, as soon as I hit those... quarterfinal, semi-final stages, they were just a different team in competitiveness and so forth. So, let me just have a look at this. Let's run through this, make sure I've got this right. So, we had France, South Africa quarterfinal, New Zealand versus Ireland quarterfinal, the 2 best games, Ireland versus South Africa pool game, the final, Samoa versus England, and England versus South Africa in the semi-final as our 5 stars. So, 2 5-star pool games, this one may... I'm going to actually move you below there, I think, just because a pool game like that just drops below you. I'm happy with all of the 4 stars. This one could slip into there, but I'm just, again, the way Argentina showed up, the semi-final, I'm leaving it there. Is there any other 1 stars? You could easily put all of these into 1 star. I'm actually going to do that. I think if I am going to be honest with myself, any game where you spank Romania does not deserve to be in there, and so that puts the early Namibia game down, but the Portugal-Aussie ones, yeah, that seems a bit more right. So we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now everyone's going to question, and I get it, why the Romania-Ireland game was so high. I just think the attacking nature of... If you go back and watch that game, you'll understand what I'm saying. The broken play, it was just fascinating for the first game of the Irish tournament. So there you have it. That is my list, my grading of each game from the Rugby World Cup. If you disagree, if you have any comments about it, if you have different ideas, please let me know in the comment section. If you like what you see, make sure you subscribe, do all that good stuff, share it around. But I will be back again soon. I have been Luke from the Sports Booth. See you later.